In 2006, Rockstar Games released the ever-classic open-world title, Bully, also known as Canis Canem Edit in some regions, including my own. It took the style of Grand Theft Auto to the playground as players step into the shoes of juvenile delinquent James Jimmy Hopkins as he involuntarily lands himself at the Bulworth Academy boarding school in a fictional town of Bulworth. The title is still being enjoyed as of today, almost 20 years following its initial release, with popular YouTubers such as Swegter still currently making content on it. But what makes Bully both so special and memorable after all these years? Well, in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at just that. Welcome to the video. You're listening to Phil of Philby Gaming. If you enjoy the following, you all know what to do, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, after watching, please consider doing so. With that being said, let's not delay any further. The legend that is Bully. So to begin, let's tell the story of Bully. We begin our journey with our protagonist, Jimmy Hopkins, as he's dropped outside the school gates of Bulworth Academy, almost abandoned by his mother and new stepfather. Firstly being greeted by the school secretary, Miss Danvers, we're sent to the office of Dr. Crabblesnitch, the school's principal. Receiving a bit of a telling off before we've even committed a single crime, Jimmy then heads to the boys' dorm, where he's introduced to a school faction known as the Bullies. Following a knockdown, Jimmy makes it to the dorm, where he's introduced to fellow pupil Gary Smith. Gary, after giving Jimmy some insight to the school, citing he would need a friend if he wishes to survive the halls, gives Jimmy a tour of the school, introducing him to the cliques or factions. The bullies, who we've already met, the nerds, the preps, the greasers and the jocks. Gary gives a little information about each, to which Jimmy replies he's not concerned about any of them. It's following this that we're introduced to an important aspect of the game, the classes, something of which we'll discuss later. The bullies continue to try and intimidate Jimmy by leading him into a trap, with Jimmy gaining the upper hand. Gary and Jimmy also continue to attempt to assert dominance in the school as they launch a somewhat sneaky attack on the jocks too. Gary continues to introduce Jimmy to some of the locals of the school, including a homeless former army veteran who Jimmy befriends, in turn learning some new fighting skills. In the first chapter of the title, Jimmy further familiarises himself with his fellow students, those such as Algernon, who request Jimmy to assist them in exchange for money or new items, such as acquiring a skateboard from Bucky after rescuing him from the greasers, or protecting Ernest from the jocks as they attempt to sabotage his speech. Halloween soon arrives, giving Jimmy, Gary and their friend Pete an opportunity to play pranks on the other students and faculty in this themed-based mission, this one in particular giving his insight to the character of Gary and his sadistic ways. Gary's behaviour becomes increasingly unhinged and his paranoid thinking soon leads him to betraying Jimmy, leading to a brawl between Jimmy and Russell, leader of the bullies, in the Hole, an area in the school basement where students settle their differences. With Jimmy becoming the victor, the bullies bow down and now have become allies. So after dealing with the bullies, Jimmy continues on at Bulworth, helping not only students but teachers too, by running errands such as collecting required items for the lunch lady's date or retrieving stashed bottles of alcohol to protect his favourite English teacher, Mr. Galloway. So after attending a few more classes, furthering his education, it's time for Jimmy to turn his attention to the preppies. Although their relationship begins pretty amicably, Gally later re-emerges, convincing the faction that Jimmy has been spreading lies about them, the exact same scheme he pulled with Russell and his boys. This forces Jimmy and the preppies to now become enemies. In an array of different tasks, Jimmy humiliates the group by beating them at bicycle races, seizing control of their beach house following a boxing tournament, causing property damage to one of their homes and defeating their top boys in combat. Following this, Jimmy now has two factions on his side, the preppies and the bullies. In between this all, Jimmy continues to help fellow students and teachers, for some reason involving himself in some seedy activity for the perverted PE teacher, Mr. Burton. As we enter Chapter 3 of the title, Jimmy begins to assist some of the locals in the town of Bulworth, including an alcoholic Santa Claus who should not be allowed around children, as well as an asthmatic comic book store owner who's been robbed, all the while continuing to learn new moves from the vagrant who resides behind the old abandoned school bus, as well as continuing to perform tasks and errands for the teachers, earning himself credibility in the process. With two of the factions conquered, Jimmy now turns his attention to the greasers as he continues to pursue his goals of seizing control of the school. Jimmy intertwines himself with Johnny Vincent, leader of the clique, and Lola, his unfaithful girlfriend. Algernon somehow ends up in the mix too, seemingly led astray by Lola. This continues and eventually leads into a large brawl in the town, so large that the local police intervene and make arrests, giving chase to both Jimmy and Johnny. This ends up being an ambush set up by the Greasers as Jimmy faces a boss battle against a heartbroken leader. After defeating him in a scrapyard, Jimmy now has control of 3 factions, with only one left to conquer in the school, the Jocks. This is where we enter Chapter 4 of the title. Completing his coursework in certain subjects such as chemistry and English, Jimmy now has more free time to explore. He continues to help the teachers in a manner of ways, such as collecting items from the town or delivering packages on their behalf. In the meantime, with intentions of defeating the toughest clique in the school, the Jocks, Jimmy seeks the assistance of the weakest but smartest, the Nerds. After defeating Ernest, their leader, at the Nerd stronghold to the rear of the school, Jimmy and the gang in green begin to plot against the Jocks with intentions of taking them down. In the meantime, Jimmy continues to insert himself into situations with the teachers, such as rescuing the drunkard, Mr. Galloway, from a mental health institution at the request of Miss Phillips. Using brains over brawn, Jimmy and the Nerds set up traps at the travelling carnival, humiliate the cheerleaders, and take control of the Jocks clubhouse next to the football field. Jimmy soon realises that Ernest is a little perverted as he requests Jimmy to perform some shady tasks, such as sneakily taking some inappropriate photos of Mandy, which lead to these pictures being posted around the town of Bulworth. The Nerds, with Jimmy's support, continue to take the fight to the Jocks as they defend their home base from attack, as well as beat up their mascot, enabling Jimmy to go undercover. Whilst maintaining a disguise, Jimmy sets traps upon the football field, attempting to humiliate the faction, before taking the final fight to the entire team, closing this chapter and placing Jimmy as the leader of the school. As we enter Chapter 5, Jimmy, now in control of all of the factions of the school, watches as his empire begins to crumble from within. The groups begin to turn on Jimmy, one by one, as they expect of him to continue to defend them all. Jimmy, whilst trying to maintain control of the cliques, must perform duties such as save the gym from burning down and rescuing Johnny Vincent from the mental health asylum after he commits himself, very similar to how we did with Mr. Galloway. It's at this point that Jimmy Hopkins is expelled from Bulworth due to lies spread by Gary. Jimmy soon learns that someone is ambushing his newfound friends, and after some investigating, we learn that it's a further clique beyond the gates of the school, a faction of rejects and undesirables known as the Townies. This group consists of those who either couldn't afford to attend Bulworth Academy or were expelled from it. Whilst inserting himself into the faction's business, Jimmy befriends a lady named Zoe and learns that she was expelled from the school after exposing the sex pest teacher, Mr. Burton. He also assists some of the other members by helping them cause mayhem on a town they believe to have rejected them as outcasts. Eventually, after infiltrating the Townie stronghold, Jimmy learns that Gary was behind the actions of the Townies, such as setting alight the gym or stealing from the Preppy's trophy cabinet. After dealing with the leader, Edgar, Jimmy and the Townies approach the school, learning from Zoe that Gary Smith has caused the riot. As they fight their way through the grounds, Jimmy retakes control of each of the cliques as they're all set on destroying one another before finally confronting Gary. After a showdown, with the pair exchange heated words and Gary confesses to why he did what he did, the pair fall through the floors and winds up in Principal Crabblesnitch's office. Then order is restored as it's recognised that Jimmy saved the school and Gary is exposed for his actions before being permanently expelled. But Bully is more than just a tale, it's an open world beauty with so much to see and do. So let's take a look at the aspects outside of the narrative, beginning with the classes and why they're important. In total, and depending on your edition, Bully has 10 separate classrooms to attend, each with 5 different lessons. We have chemistry, English, art, gym, biology, music, shop, photography, geography, and a maths class. Each class introduces a mini-game of sorts, such as English having Jimmy make as many words as possible, music where he must partake in a quick-time event, or gym where Jimmy must battle against his schoolmates in either wrestling bouts or rounds of dodgeball. But why is it important to attend class? Well, it's more than simply furthering Jimmy's education. As each lesson is successfully completed, Jimmy is awarded For example, as he completes his chemistry lessons, Jimmy is granted access to a chemistry station in his dorm room, and further progression in this lesson will unlock new abilities such as creating firecrackers, stink bombs and itching powder. After successfully completing each shop lesson, Jimmy is awarded a new BMX bike, each one better than the last. Music lessons will award Jimmy with new clothing, as do the maths and biology classes. English lessons award Jimmy with bested apologies when facing bullies, prefects, or later the local law. Completing art lessons will give Jimmy the ability to earn health boosts. Geography will unlock locations of hidden collectibles on the in-game map, and photography will unlock various things, such as a yearbook in which Jimmy can take photos of other students to fill, upgrade his camera, and lastly, earn double tickets at the carnival. But I suppose no one wants to be stuck in a stuffy classroom all day, so what else is there to do? Let's take a look at the activities in the world of Polwarth Academy and its surrounding town. There's a lot to see and do in the world of Bully. If Jimmy wants to try his hand at stealing from other students, he can pick their personal lockers and acquire anything from weaponry such as firecrackers or itching powder to new items of clothing, saving and purchasing from stores, which is another aspect of the game. Should you wish to alter Jimmy's appearance, you can do so in a manner of ways. Different hairstyles or colours, doable. New school threads, also there. Want to radically alter Jimmy's attire, giving him either a preppy look or alternative rock? Easy. You can even give Jimmy a tattoo if you wish. But there's much more than just changing clothes and hair. If Jimmy wants to earn a little pocket money, he can. Jimmy can perform errands for the school students or general population of Polwarth. This can range from collecting crabs for a store owner, challenging yourself by swimming to a buoy and back, beating the quest giver's time, giving a vagrant some spare change, helping a lady find her lost dog, or helping the local law in capturing criminals in the act, all but to name a few. Jimmy can also deliver papers, mow lawns, or if he's heading for a fight, he can hire others to follow him into battle. With these newly acquired funds, Jimmy can also shop at stores where he can purchase anything from drinks for nourishment at the Yum Yum market, spend at the carnival, or purchase new bicycles if you wish. As mentioned before, gym class isn't the only place that Jimmy can learn new fighting moves. He can learn from the army vet on the school grounds after finding spare radio parts for him, which also takes us to the collectibles. Scattered throughout the world in typical Rockstar Games fashion, Jimmy can collect rubber bands, Grotto and Gremlins cards, smashed pumpkins and mock gravestones for example, each rewarding Jimmy upon finding gold respectively. But what if Jimmy wants a little downtime? Every kid deserves to have fun. To keep himself entertained, Jimmy can play a game of penalty kicks, keepy-ups, try to beat the high score on arcade machines, play an array of games at the travelling carnival, ranging from a roller coaster to a dunk tank to a go-kart race, partake in bike races, test your skills at a bike park, or as mentioned before, fill the school's yearbook with photos of students, among many other things. The world is Jimmy's oyster. Throughout the world, most aforementioned factions have their own respective clubhouses, which Jimmy can obtain by completing challenges. For the preppies, it's a boxing match. For the townies, it's a brawl. For the nerds, it's beating the high score on their arcade machine. And for the jocks, it's beating them in a game of dodgeball. Jimmy can use these locations to change clothes and save the game. But what if Jimmy, or more specifically the player, wants to be a bit of a bad boy? Well, of course, that's possible. Jimmy can play pranks on the other students, shove kids into lockers, plant firecrackers in a bathroom, pull a fire alarm, or dunk kids' heads for a swirly. Jimmy also has an array of weaponry he can choose from to wreak havoc, such as his slingshot, throwables, and weapons acquired through progression, such as the spud gun or potato flak cannon. But crime doesn't pay, and no one is above the law. Jimmy has to look out for prefects, whom after witnessing Jimmy break rules such as skipping class, bullying, vandalism or theft, will send him to the principal's office for a telling off, leading to detention-based tasks. Outside of the school grounds, Jimmy also has to avoid being caught by the law, where if caught, he'll have some of his weapons confiscated, barring the slingshot and skateboard for example. So even though Bully is almost 20 years old, to myself and many others, it still holds strong. Yes, there are drawbacks to the title, such as the cut narrative content towards the latter stages of the game. I'm unsure of the reasons, but the final chapter definitely lost some of its missions, while Rockstar kept seemingly pointless ones in, such as rats in the library. Personally, I would have been happy to substitute this for a more narrative-based scene that expanded the story of Bully. Sometimes the controls can be a little difficult too, and not as responsive as one would hope. and the camera angles can lead to confusion sometimes, but I'm not trying to be too harsh on the title, as we need to remember that this was originally a PlayStation 2 game. Things are much more advanced now. So all in all, do I think you should give Bully a try? Well, if open world games are your thing, absolutely yes. I'd even suggest going back and revisiting to relive the glory days of the PS2 if you've played this previously. Let me know in the comment section if this was a title you enjoyed, or if you haven't tried it, are you thinking of giving it a whirl? If you enjoyed what you saw today, you all know what to do, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Let me know below also if you have any video ideas you wish for me to cover. Thank you all for watching. You've been listening to Phil of Philby Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.